What up, guys? It's been a little while. I haven't done a tutorial in a long time. Maybe this is your first time watching one of my videos. Maybe this is your 50th. Either way, I'm Adam Elmakias. I'm a music photographer from San Diego, California, and today I'm going to teach you the basics, a very in-depth basic of how to use Lightroom. Lightroom is the main photo editor that I use, and most people use. It's quick, it's easy, everything is right there in front of you, and it can process a lot of images and sort through them very quickly. So if you work on tight time restrictions, or you just have a bunch of images, as I know most of us do, after all, we mostly shoot digital, this is for you. So what we'll be covering today is, well, I'll show you. We've got, in the top left here, we have my Lightroom workspace. I'm in the top right. I've got a keyboard here. That's to show you what buttons I am pressing. And then we have the thumbnails down here. Honestly, not really necessary, but I didn't have anything else to put there, so I'll put in the thumbnails there. We are going to cover mostly the develop mode. Actually, pretty much only the develop mode, which is the second mode up top here in Lightroom. Library is the first mode, and that is mostly used to sort through your images. If you're wondering why I'm looking up here, it's because my workspace is up here, but my camera is down here. I apologize, my chin is all right, so you're going to look at that a lot today. But that's what we're going to go over. We're going to go over basic, tone curve, hue saturation, luminosity, color, black and white, split toning, detail, lens corrections, transform, effects. This is everything I know. This is everything I've taught myself through online research and just playing around with Lightroom, asking people who follow me for some help, for some tips. So I tried to make it as all-encompassing as possible, but I may have missed some things. And I look forward to you telling me what I missed, so next time I make one of these things, it can be even better. So if I mess up, if I make a mistake, or you disagree with something I'm doing, please tell me. I'm not going to take it personally. I will learn from it. All right, cool. Well, that's the intro. Now, here we go. And I hope that everything works and we get this done on the first try. Okay, so this is your develop mode. This is where you can basically edit your images. So after you selected them, you bring them in here, and that is going to allow them to be worked on. This is already edited, but on the bottom here I have two copies of every image, an unedited and an edited one. With the exception of this, I didn't do correctly, but there's the unedited. This is straight out of camera. It was shot with, well, you can see what it's shot with up here. So you've got the ISO 100, 24 millimeters, f2.0 at 1/320th of a second, and this was shot with the Sigma Quattro SD. Yeah, so the colors are a little weird, because it's a weird camera, but I like that camera, so I shoot with it sometimes. Anyway, before, after, and yeah, that's what it there is. So, your first step, composition. Composition is kind of preparing your canvas. So you've got this photo, you don't exactly know where to start, what you're going to do, but you kind of want to figure out your goal, what you're going for. Maybe you're going to crop a lot of the image, maybe you're going to keep most of it. You don't quite know yet because you're just looking at this image for the first time. So first step is to kind of play around with some crops, figure it out. So, crop tool. The crop tool is right here, top left corner of this work area. These are all your tools, and you can get there quickly by pressing the R. Ta-da, crop overlay. Now, a crop overlay has, by default, a bunch of grids. I think this is the default. Maybe it's not, but you can cycle through them using this button, the O. So look at that. We've got all these different overlays, rule of thirds, all the ones that I don't know the names of, and that's okay, but they all work, and they all have a different purpose. And I generally stick to this one because I like all the lines. I use rule of thirds a lot. I can kind of imagine it though, so I just use this to line up stuff. And for this image, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew my goal for this image, identify a goal, is to show people his back tattoos and that he's a drummer. I don't really care about the sky and things like that, so I ended up cropping this down like that. You just click and drag, and then you go on the outside edges of the crop tool. You'll see you'll get the rotate things. Rotate. We'll try to rotate. I hope I'm not missing anything here because I've been using this for a while. So some things that are, you know, I might know myself, I might know not to teach, so I'm trying my best. But you know, that is my goal for this image. And like I said, this is straight out of camera. This is Travis Barker in Germany at Hurricane Festival. No, Southside. One of those two, because they are the same festival, just in different locations. But this is it. And I wanted to show his back tattoo, so I didn't want the top, and I knew that was kind of my goal for this image. So that's kind of your first step here. What are you going to do with this image? How do you want it to look? And yeah, if you don't know all these different, there's a lot of different tools in here. So let's say we go back to the crop tool. click it, and you cycle through all these things, and you're like, man, I don't know what any of these do. That's okay. All you have to do is look at the image, and when it looks right in your eyes, that's all that matters. So after I figure out my crop, I actually just reset it. I go back to where it was, and let's do another image though, just to use another example. And one that's a little more intense. We've got this guy. This is the final image. Now where's that original at? I know we got it in here somewhere. Oh, we don't? Oh, we do. I changed it a lot. Here's the original. Whoa, that looks different. Cool. So right off the bat, unbalanced to me, so I played around with the crop a little bit. Something like this is what I liked, but I didn't like the distorted look, so let's reset it just so we can go back to the beginning. There's a fly in here. Got you. But let's reset it. We're going to enable profile corrections. Whoa, you can see the difference there. I just got a call, so if the audio is a little choppy, that's just what happened, and now I'm in airplane mode. No more calls from Alabama. Probably not even important. Changed it a lot. What it did is it removed all the distortion, which actually distorts it even more and gets rid of some of the things. So, you know, we have all this extra information that is now gone. That's okay. I wanted it like that. But if it's too severe for you, what you can do is you can go to manual here and you can do it on your own. So, opposite of fisheye, bring in the outsides, push it in, and that'll affect it. Not as insane, but does it. And basically from there you have this constrained crop, and what that'll do is it'll hold the crop to the canvas instead of letting these white edges come in. So watch, constrained crop goes away. All right, got it. Reset it. Now we do it with constrained crop from the get-go, where you can see something like that. Cool. So those are your options there. I don't really use the defringe. This is used you probably won't use this, so we're not going to go over it. Don't worry about that stuff too much. Vignetting, you however might use. If your outsides are too light or too dark, you slide it to the left or to the right to change that. And if the manual is a little bit confusing for you, you can go right back to profile here and enable the automatic and play around with the vignetting here. So brighter on the outside, darker on the outside. You can see the edges getting darker and brighter. And then you have the distortion if you want to really take it next level. Play around with those. Again, the idea is to find something that works for your eyes. There's no right or wrong. It's going to be different for every image. It's just what you want. So I ended up like this is the final image. So how we get there is I cropped it down, something like this. Whoa. I spun it a little bit this way to balance it out and cropped it down because I want it to be wider. And then I enabled the profile corrections. It's something like that. That's probably not perfect. Similar though. So you can see, similar image, played around with it a little bit more, but that is what lens correction is for. And you want to figure these things out before you go into editing because they can really change your image a lot. And they can change how you edit your image. So it's good to figure them out, figure out what you're going to do. Yeah, cool. All right. I'm glad we have these extreme images. And all these images are for a recent blog I posted. If you want to check out their final form, just on my website, adamomakayas.com, from tour in Europe. Music, that's what I do with a band called The Day to Remember. Best dudes. Check it out. Enjoy. Cool. Well, now that you understand lens corrections, I want to show you a little bit more of an advanced option. I'm not going to go too deep into it because, to be honest, I don't even understand it myself all the way. But we have something that can get even a little more particular for when your images are really distorted, and that is we have the transform. And let's see if we can reset this bad boy. Cool. So reset this thing, and basically what this does is you can see how he's kind of stretched out on the left here. You can almost smush that in and correct a little bit. And if I do the auto, it'll bring it down a little bit like that. And this is good. I suggest playing around with this on your image and see how it affects it because sometimes it can really change the image in a way you didn't even imagine possible. And that's kind of what I did for this one. And I forget what I actually did. But let's turn this constrained crop on. Something like this. So it slimmed him out a little bit and allowed him to not be so distorted. That's not the right before and after. But every control here has a little on-off switch, so we're going to click off, before, after, and you can see how that kind of brought him down, shrunk him a little bit, and made him look a little less stretched for my lens, because I was using a wide lens. I was using the Sigma 20mm. 20 millimeters is pretty wide, not fisheye, but we got a little bit of distortion there, and I wanted it to look a little more natural, because I like the wide shot, but I don't like the unnatural look of it sometimes. So that's what this helps with. But you can play around with that. So like I said, we've got crop tool, we've got lens correction and transform, and those are all prerequisites, I can say the word, to actually editing, spot editing, fixing your image. So Do those first, figure out what direction you're going in, and then we'll move on. Cool. All right, now that we've got that done, so let's get an image. Let's get an image we want to work on here. What should we use today? We've got a few different ones. Let's just go back to this Travis image, just because it's a nice looking thing. So what we've got here are some hotkeys that'll just help you navigating Lightroom. Command Z is one of the most important ones, and that's undo. So anything you do, you can undo. Command Z, undo, undo. And actually, there is a history thing on the left palette over here. I have this hidden, because I don't really use it much, but it'll tell you everything you've done to the image, and you can undo on your own, or you can just click through on it. And it looks like, yeah. So that's basically, you can navigate through what you've done, and that's all there is to it. Or you can clear it like I just did and didn't mean to. Command Z, do something wrong, you can undo it. You can go back a pretty big amount of steps, and it's a good option to have. I'm going to slide that panel back in by clicking this arrow right here, because I don't really need it. We're not covering that today. And yeah, let's go back. So tab removes the tab pops them up, basically full screen, add your tabs back. If you press tab, add the tabs back. Pretty straightforward. Full screen is F. Let's see how that looks. I don't even know what C is because it's covering my whole screen. But that's full screen. You can change the background color here by right-clicking on it. So you got black, dark gray, medium gray, white gray, whatever you want. But I like medium gray. Something like that looks nice to me. Also, we have G and D, which switches between library and develop, which can help you go back and forth pretty easily. I don't really need to do it, but that's what we've got. And now we've got down here in the wrong mode, so let's put it back to grid. Cool. If you're in crop, so go back to crop here. I pressed the wrong hotkey, but if you do X, it'll switch orientation, which is really helpful. And you can easily go back and forth between horizontal and vertical, or portrait and landscape, whatever you want to call it. I already covered this, but R is crop. And Y compares before and after. So my before for this was actually a black and white image because that was the edit, so that's why you can see it. And yeah, that's all there is to that. It's helpful, like if you're like, hey, what did I just do? It's really hard to tell. If I press Y, I can see, oh, I made a little adjustment. Cool. That's all there is to that. Those are kind of the ones. So that's all there is to that. In addition, Command, I think it's Command, no, Alt. Alt on a Mac, Option on a PC is kind of your magic key in Lightroom. It, combined with clicking your mouse, reveals a lot of extra options, and we will cover those throughout this. So don't worry, I'm going to go over it. It's awesome. You'll love it. Alt on a Mac, Option on a PC. All right, let's do this. Which image should we use for basic? We're going to cover basic first. So none of these tools up top we're going to cover today. Those are important, but they're called spot editing. So what they are is more editing certain parts of the image. And we're going to go over things that uniformly edit the image or edit it on a per channel basis. So you're not just selecting the sky, you're not just selecting his back manually, you're only doing it by using colors, luminosity, things like that. These ones you manually selected, it's a little more artsy, you got to draw some stuff on. Once you have a good understanding of Lightroom, you can really take advantage of those. But within those tools, there's even more tools, so we're going to save those for a different time. Right now, we're just doing this. All right, basic. Let's get an image with some colors to it. Let's use this guy. Let's reset this thing. This will be easy to see. Okay, so white balance, right up here. WB stands for white balance. You have all these auto options, and basically all those auto options are going to do is switch these two sliders below it. So you don't really have to use them. You can just change the sliders if you want. And the sliders are kind of self-explanatory. You have temp, short for temperature here, and that can slide to the right, more yellow. Slide to the left, a little more blue. And you have all the extremes. You can double-click this slider to reset it. That works for both, I believe. That's a reset, yep. And you can also hold down Alt and reset all of it. Reset tone, reset, get rid of Alt. Cool. If you want, you can take this dropper here, and this is really good. You find a white point that isn't blown out. So these aren't too bright. There's not a lot of data here. See, they can't see it, but on my screen it says cannot set white balance here. There's not enough information. So we need to find something that's not as bright, but is white. So this right here looks good. Cool, and that'll automatically set the white balance. So let's say this is what the photo looked like. You go back here, you click here. It'll change it to not be as yellow. So it'll take that point, it'll make it, it will sample that point, it'll make it a neutral white, and your whole rest of your image will adjust accordingly. Cool? Cool. Obviously, you can also change the treatment to black and white up here. That'll change your options. So you can see the bottom down there, vibrance and saturation disappear because they're irrelevant in black and white. But I usually save black and white for the last step. I usually work in color, and if I decide in black and white, then I'll edit in black and white. But we're going with color for this guy. Cool. Temperature and tint. So tint, yeah, more purple, more green. The more you understand, the more you work with these, the more you'll know how it works. So like this is a little too green for me. I would edit to the right a little bit. That's about right. And now we're ready to move on. Exposure. The exposure is how bright the image is, kind of. How exposed the image is. So you can do this, obviously most of this is done in camera, but if it's too dark, too bright, you can change it. Maybe one darker, brighter, something like that. This one's actually pretty spot on. So I'm going to keep it right where it was. If you press auto, it does something like that. I usually don't use auto. It'll adjust everything. But yeah, exposure. Contrast. How contrasty do you want the image? I like to work in a pretty flat image, so I'll actually usually decrease the contrast a little bit now and then increase it later. But if you like it, you can all the way up, all the way down. And that's just going to make your blacks more black, your whites more white, and everything in between is going to get crushed. Cool. Highlights. Your highlights, and it's actually showing, if you can see. So all these things adjust a different part of this histogram up top. And you can even adjust them by clicking up here. I wanted to save that for the end, but I'll tell you now, clicking here and dragging like so. But basically, they're adjusting different areas of your spectrum. So this is dark, this is light, and on the very end you have blacks, on the very end to the right you have whites, highlights, shadows, and then in the middle here is your exposure. So what you want to do is the highlights is going to adjust this area. So the stuff that's not quite super bright, but this area. And for this image is a little bit too bright, so I'm bringing down the highlights to rescue some of those. And you can see that, how it's a little bit better now. Nothing's really blown out, too bright. And if something is ever blown out, you can check, like, oh, that looks like this might be too bright. You can click this up here and it'll tell you the red areas are too bright. And what that means is there's actually no data in there. It's a pure white color. You have nothing in there of use. And if your images start in that zone, you can't rescue it. There's no information to rescue. So because mine was a little bit bright, but not too bright, I can rescue it a little bit. So you have a range you can rescue in. Same goes for the dark. You know, I can show you. We'll make it all black. Those images would be, if it started like this, those would be too black to rescue. All right, cool. Put that back. And yeah, so shadows, everything works the same here. To the right is basically decreasing the amount of shadows, and to the left is increasing. Oh, we gotta turn off that. Oh, we didn't get it up. We didn't get it turned off. Cool, we got it. Whites makes the whites a little brighter, whites a little darker, and blacks. Blacks lighter, blacks darker. So the difference between blacks and shadows is basically everything that's not in exposure and is not pure black. It's right there. And then on the other side is the opposite. You know, everything that's not in whites. I'm getting confused with my words, but basically you can see up here when I highlight it, it highlights it down there. So we got whites, highlights, exposure, shadows, blacks. Got it? Cool. You got this. And if you're more like you just like to click and slide, you can just click up here, slide around, do your thing. Whatever you want to do. Let's go ahead and reset that back so we have the image. Cool. So that is how all that works. Now we're going to get to clarity. Let's get a new image though. I like this image. This is good for sharpening. Alright, so we have clarity. What clarity does is anywhere there's a lot of contrast in your image or it changes exposure levels pretty abruptly, it's going to find that line and it's going to enhance it. So watch this. Clarity up. You can kind of see how everything started popping. Clarity down. See how everything's a little more blurry. And you can really use this to your advantage, especially in an image like this. Let's make it black and white so you can even see it better. I'm going to just mess with it a little bit here just so we can get it. Alright, cool. Reset the clarity. Alright, so you can see these lines. They're cool, but we want to make them pop a little bit more. Let's go like that. And you can see how his hair is getting more and more intense. And that's what clarity does. I use the clarity very limited. I don't use it very often. It's just to make the image pop a little bit. You can really go overboard on this, so be careful. Don't go crazy. When somebody looks at your image, you want them to see the image, not the edit. So if they can tell what you did to edit it, maybe switch it up a little bit. Unless it's like HDR where it's obviously edited and looks cool, be careful. All right, let's go back to colors so we can work with these other two. Whoops, getting a little ahead of yourself there. So we got that image. Let's get an image where we can see color. We got this guy. We got Josh smiling on stage here. And this is in Austria. No. I don't know where this is. It's somewhere in Europe. But, all right, we got Josh here. And Josh is smiling. It's yellow. We want to make it a little more bright. And we want to, let me just edit it how I would edit it up here. So exposure up a little bit. Blacks down. Something like this would probably be what I would do to the photo. And a little bit of clarity. How about? Cool. Let's get rid of some of those purples and make it a little more green. Do you want more yellow? We want more yellow. And I would do something else, but we haven't covered it yet, so I can't show you. Yeah, I'll do that later. So this is what we got now. And I think I need more shadows down. Cool. So vibrance. What vibrance does, actually let's go over saturation first. So you've got saturation over here. What it will do when you increase it is it will make everything more saturated or more intense, and then everything not as intense. So you have that option of how much more saturated. All right, so next we have vibrance. And vibrance is basically the same as saturation, only it prioritizes the muted colors and the colors that aren't skin tones. So it's going to leave back the yellows and the reds and the oranges-ish and make everything else a little more saturated. And you could kind of play around with this in both directions. You can either increase or decrease. And these are all tools, so you kind of got to know how to use them. They're not going to be perfect, and you can kind of tell here if I increase this, what colors will increase. So you can see how like these yellows aren't getting as quite intense as these greens are, and that is kind of how vibrance works, and the blues are getting very intense. And again, these are all tools. You don't have to use them on every image. You just got to figure out how they work for you, how to best, you don't take your hammer and try to hit the screw in. You screw it in. That's kind of the same concept here. If your image doesn't need a vibrance adjustment, then don't use vibrance, use saturation. You kind of got to learn the tools and then learn when to use them, which is probably the hardest part. Cool. Sweet. That does it for the basic section. I hope that helped you out a little bit. And now we're going to move on to tone curve. Cool. Here we go. All right, so maybe we'll just use the same image here, but here we have tone curve. And tone curve is a way to adjust all the things that we covered in basic. These ones right here, the ones that have to do with the ones that you can see on the histogram, but in a different way. So curve, the more intense the curve, the more intense your contrast. So we can do we can actually click on here and just drag it down. And you can kind of see, that doesn't look very good. You're wondering, yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than the one up top. And basically what you can do is, the best way for me to do it is I click this thing right here, it's a little dot, and you can bring it, and you can see it sliding up and down the histogram. So as I get to the darker areas, it's going to go to the bottom left, and as I go to the top right up there, it's going to get lighter. We don't have too many lights in here. But let's brighten it up just so I can show you here. There we go. Now, cool. Now we've got the brights up there. Probably don't have much of the darks, maybe right here. And you can click, and that's going to add a point to it. Well, click, and then you drag it. And it adds a point, and then increases or decreases. And then as you go, you can see it going up and down. Woo, let's go to the darks. We can make it a little more contrasty in the dark area. So we're clicking and dragging up or down. That's all I'm doing right now. Got it? All right, let's reset that. Okay, so all the rest of these controls are basically other ways to do what we just did. You can also do it manually by changing the highlights and the lights. And this is just another way to kind of visualize what's going on in your photo. Got it? Cool. Down here, I don't really use point curve too much, and I don't change these parameters, so don't worry about that right now. But you have this kind of old school way of doing curves, and basically back in the old Photoshop, this was how you used to do it most of the time. You click this, and you physically put the dots on here. You click and kind of drag, and it's a quick way to do it. And this is called like an S curve, and that is bad up top, but you get the idea here. It doesn't look too great, but that is how you edit it. So when and if you need to edit it, that is how you edit it. But to be quite honest, I suggest sticking to basic for now. Tone curve maybe a little later. I don't use it very often, but that is that tool should you need to use that tool. Cool. All right, next section is going to work with the colors of your image. So we have HSL, color, black and white. And each of those is kind of a category to a category. So if we click HSL, it's going to show us hue, saturation, luminance. That's what that stands for. Then we have all, where it'll put them all together. We click color, it's going to break it down on a color by color basis, or all. And within that, you can edit the hue, saturation, and luminance. And lastly, we have black and white, should you want to put your image in black and white. I know what you're thinking, why are there color channels in black and white? And that is because you can edit your colors based on the channels, even when it's in black and white, because it still retains that information. Cool. So let's start with hue, saturation, and luminance. This allows you to adjust the hue, the saturation, and the luminance of each color. So let's just do it one at a time, even though you can view it all right there. So if you're pretty good at telling what area you want to adjust, then you can do it by just clicking here. So like, for example, let's find another image actually. It's a little bit easier to differentiate the colors. This guy's got a lot of colors in it. And I've already edited this photo. This is the edit. Let's make it a little brighter. But for sake of this, you can edit each channel individually. So these are obviously purples. So if we go down here, we change the purples, and we make its hue different, you can see those colors are just changing. So it's taking that parameter of color and it's shifting its color. Maybe something a little closer here. Let's do this orange. So check that out. That's probably an orange. This looks like orange right here. If we change it, you can see it changing its hue. And then you're really getting into messing with the image. So you can mess stuff up here. So you got to be careful. But you can also, just like in curves, you can click this right here and you can choose the part of the image. Whatever you have selected, hue, saturation, or luminance, you can click and you can change it. So we click that and you can see that's the blues and the purples. And it's changing it as we slide up and down with our mouse. Click and drag. Got it? So that's how hue works. And we'll reset it, and we'll go to saturation. Saturation, same concept, but for the saturation on a channel by channel basis. So again, if you know what channel you want to increase, you can just click here, and you can see I'm making the crowd way more pink. Or let's say you just want to click and drag. Oh, I just want, the blues to be more saturated. Click and drag up. We got it? Super straightforward. You got this. And it's really self-explanatory. You're like, man, how do I change to red? Well, you use the red channel. That's all there is to it. All right, luminance is adjusting how bright a color is on a per channel basis. So again, if you know it's purple and you want to change purples, you can make it brighter. I use luminance a lot, especially in skin tones. I'll show you here. So we've got this, but we want to make the oranges and the reds and the yellows pop out. Doof, doof. Just like that. And if you don't know what channels are, you just click and drag. And maybe you want to make the greens really dark. Maybe you want the blues bright, because remember there's blues in the background here. We brighten those up. You can really mess around with your image and just play around with them. Enjoy them. They're there to help you, and they're tools. So you got to apply them where they make sense. Let's reset this bad boy. Sweet. So that's all there is for that. Move to color here. This is it's kind of the same controls, but instead here you're navigating by category and then changing the color. Here you're navigating by color and then changing the category. So they are essentially the same tools, only like, let's say your image is all reds and you just need to work with the reds. You have it all in one spot right here. So if you wanted to work with reds here, you'd have to click through all of these and it's kind of annoying. But here, you can do one at a time. However, this does not have the click and drag like the other mode does. So you're losing that to gain the manual of it. Black and white, you can actually see, if you remember where the reds are, they're in his face, so this will adjust his face, and that's what the channels are for. They're going to adjust, the black and white makes it based on the color that was there, even though you can't see it now. Cool? And Alt on a Mac, Option on a PC, resets everything. You can see when I click it, all the reset options come up. So if you ever want to reset it, just reset. That's good if you just want to reset certain things. Yeah. Cool. That's all there is to that. All right. Next one. We got something else coming at you. We got split toning. Split toning is one of my favorites. And if you remember, I said I wanted to do something else for this image. And split toning works in a way where it takes either the shadows or the highlights. So if you remember which areas are those up top, we got here or here, and it adjusts them and adds a color to it. The hue is what color you are changing it to, and the saturation is how much of that color you are going to do. So it's the degree. You also have the option of clicking this and just choosing a color. So that is there for you as well. So let's see. So when would you ever use this? Well, I use this when Well, for this image, for example, I love when you have yellow highlights to make the shadows red because I think they go really good together. So what I would do in this one is choose red, but you're like, oh, I can't see any red, I'm changing the hue. Well, that's because your intensity is at 0. So I usually make the intensity up top and then change it to find the color I want, but I know I want red, so it's right here, and then I adjust it accordingly. But, little trick, remember we said Alt on a Mac, Option on a PC? Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC is the hotkey. So what you can do is when you click this and you click on hue, it'll automatically change it to the 100% for you. So you don't have to put it up there and then put it back. You can do that. And then as you drag, it'll show you a little preview. So I like the red. And then I just a little bit. Just a little bit. And I'll turn that on and off here so you can see before, after. And I just like how that looks. It gives it a little warm undertone feeling to it. And you can really, really get carried away with this one. So don't go too hard. Or maybe do. Like if that's what you want to do, do it. But play around with it. You can really change your images a lot here. I usually save this for the last step, but it morphs images. It's some good stuff. All right, let's reset you. Next, we have detail. Detail is intense. There is a default sharpen, radius, and detail added to most images. However, we're going to go a little bit in depth. So this is how you sharpen your image. And on the right here, you have a close-up area. You can click this and find the area you want to do. Click it and it'll lock in so you can see exactly how it's affecting your photo. So you'll see if we sharpen down to 0, it's a little blurry. As we bring it up, you can see it becomes a little more sharp everywhere. Now, the key comes into how much do you want to sharpen and what lines do you want to sharpen. You know, for example, in this photo, I want to sharpen the area around his bass guitar, his bass strings, his arms to make him a little more crisp, but I might not want to sharpen his face, his skin, because I don't want a gritty look on his skin. I want it to be smooth. So that's where these other options come into play. So, amount. Well, this is just adjust how much you use the sharpen. So 0 is nothing, and everything above that is more. And I don't really know how else to explain that. It's just the amount of sharpening you're doing. You can change that at any moment, scale it up and down. Cool. So for the rest of these, we got the magic button. And basically, you can hold down Alt on a Mac. That's wrong. Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and it'll preview what it's doing. Like, whoa, that looks weird. Why is it doing that? I don't want my image to look like that. That's okay. It's not going to look like that. So what is going to happen is it's showing you. It's literally showing you the lines that it is sharpening and how it's affecting them. Hard to see on the left, easy to see in this little area. And I now see my keyboard is changing into another keyboard, which is not correct. I'm just holding down Alt. I'm just holding down Option, and it's telling me I'm doing other things, which is not true. So just so you know, I'm just holding that down. Those other keys are not being pressed. That's just a weird thing with the keyboard. But let's reset this real fast, and let's try this again. So this is the default sharpening. I'm going to make it 0 actually. Actually, let's make it more extreme. So, radius. This is the size of the sharpening area around the edges. So the larger the number, the bigger the radius. So 1 is 1 pixel, and so on and so forth. So how does that affect the image? Well, I don't really understand. Kind of understand. But the higher it goes, the more gritty it gets, if you can see. You see that in the small one here? And that affects the big image a little bit, but you can't always tell as much. But you can see if I make the radius high, his skin looks terrible. If I make it low, it looks okay. And you can preview that here. There you go. And that's exactly what it's doing to the image. All those darker lines, those are the things that are getting a little more sharp. Cool. Next we have detail. And this just adjusts the amounts of sharpening in the details of the image. So what that means is, so how to explain this to you? Let's see here. So we've got threads. We've got threads in a jean right here. Let's turn up. Let's turn the sharpening up. Let's grab 100% crop of it. And if we turn the detail up to 100, it's going to sharpen even the smallest lines in the jean here. You see how it got all gritty? It's literally sharpening all the littlest lines. And as we slide it down, it's going to sharpen more of just the big lines. So maybe just the outside of his jeans. So I'll show you that with the little preview button on here. So you can see down here, big line of the jean, big line of the jean. And as we move up, what comes into play? Well, we can't even see it, but we can see it here. Little counter, little not as fun there, but you can see that it's really hard to see. So let's see if we can find another image. Ooh, maybe tattoos. Let's see if tattoos work better. It's got the zoom in here. We've got the sharpening. Now watch this. So low, that's for the little lines, and yeah, there. As we go up, you can see his tattoos are getting more and more sharp, and as we go down, it's getting less and less sharp. So it'll just be a little more intense. So now let's say we got it figured out, but it's not exactly sharpening the areas we want it to sharpen. Let's go to a face image. Here we go. This one. Well, let's go to the unedited version. Here we go. Jeremy's face. So let's go to his cheek hairs. That's probably the best place to do this. So what you can see is we've sharpened it, it's good, but it's sharpening a little bit too much. Well, I heard a noise, thought somebody was here. So what we do is you hold down Option, Alt, and I know it's going to show you some weird keyboard, but that's not what it is. And as you go up here, it's getting rid of, so this is called masking. And what masking does is it's a way of removing sharpening from areas that you don't really want to sharpen. So the background or the skin, maybe you just want to get the hair. So everything that's black is being removed and everything that's white is still being sharpened. And it prioritizes the sharpest, like the sharpest parts of the image are what are going to be, the sharpest parts of the image is what's going to remain sharpened as you go all the way to the right here. That makes sense? So here, you still got the skin in there. As you go to the right, it's just the hair, just the areas you probably want to sharpen. Somewhere like that is probably the sweet spot. So if we get rid of that, you can see how his skin gets more sharp. And if we add it all the way back up, you can see his skin is not as sharp. And you can try this on your own face image, and it's awesome. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So noise reduction is the opposite. Let's say we make it super sharp, or maybe we just find a really noisy image. What image do I have that's noisy? Do I have one? Here we go. This image is noisy. Okay, so this image is super noisy. You can see how there's all these little dots everywhere. That's the noise, and we'll even sharpen them to make them worse. Let's just make them pop. Ugh, that's gross. So noise reduction is the opposite. It reduces the noise. Smooths out the image. You can see how it's a little less noisy. And let's just reset the image altogether. And you can see the noise in there right now from the original image. Noise reduction gets rid of that noise. See how it smoothed it out? So this is extreme. You don't need to do that much. Use it very cautiously. I know it looks cool, but it does affect your overall image and your sharpness. So you got to be careful with it. I don't really understand the detail and contrast aspect yet of it. So once I research it, I'll report back. Or maybe somebody will teach me and I'll just know. But all I use is the luminance currently. Basically bring that up or down. These are obviously ways to tweak what exactly is reduced, but I don't know that yet. I'm okay with admitting it, and I don't want to give you the wrong information. So that's all I use right now. Cool? And I don't use color, detail, or smoothness. Alright, I know we're skipping some things, but I'm doing my best here. So now we're done with that. We have lens corrections and transform, which you already went over if you remember. So don't need to go over those again. We have effects. I like effects a lot. I like this image because I use grain in it, so I want to show you that. And I don't use the post-crop vignetting very much, but if you want to, again, it's this. White, black. I don't really use it. I like to keep the image generally how it is, but grain, on the other hand, I use grain. And grain adds grain to your image, which shows you what, it's what film does naturally. So the more you put in there, the more grain it's going to add. The size of it increases the size of the little specks of grain. So the bigger it is, the more gritty it's going to kind of be. Smaller it is, the more fine it will be. And then the roughness within those specks adjusts the intensity of their edges, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like a sharpen for the grain, I guess you would say, in a way. Well, that's like the effect it gives. It's weird. All this stuff is weird. It's hard to technically explain a lot of these things, but I hope it's making sense. Anyway, this is the image with no grain. Very clean, very nice looking. However, I like to add a little bit of grain because I feel it gives it a little bit of a haze and it helps blend the image together a little bit more. So that's why I do. You can't tell so much in this full shot, but it's a little bit. It just does a little bit and it's perfect. So play around with grain. You can go overboard on all these things and maybe that's what you want. So do what you want. It's your image. Don't listen to people try to give you rules. Just do whatever your heart desires and do a lot of it and it will progress into style eventually. Cool. Other than that, we have dehaze. Dehaze is a newer thing in Photoshop, and it basically is a selective automated way to add contrast. And you can see it's messing up right there because I have some masks on this photo, so let's use a different one. Those areas were selectively sharpened. That's why it's doing that. But let's find an image that could be kind of hazy. We got this guy. So there's a little bit of sun haze in here, and if we bring the dehazer up, it's going to get rid of that. It's going to add a little more contrast and kind of get rid of the haze. If we bring it down, it'll add more of it. See that? Cool. Helpful if you're shooting like a smoky show, or maybe you're shooting at sunset, or maybe there's an area with a lot of smoke in it. Play around with the dehazer. It's kind of cool. Automated, no idea how it works, but it works, and it's cool. So finally, what you do is you get your crop in there. So I know we went over it at the beginning, but now that you've edited it again, you want to go back in, you want to crop it, you want to figure out your final thing, and that's what the crop is for. So, yeah. I want to show you some before and afters. I don't want to talk through them, so I'm just going to kind of flash them on the screen for you, and you can be like, oh, that sucks, or oh, that's cool. Interesting what he did there. And all the before and after, with the exception of a few, did not have any spot editing in them. And if they did have spot editing, it's minor, and you wouldn't know anyway. Other than that, let's see. Anything else on my list here? Virtual copies. Oh, I guess I should go over that. When you're browsing your thumbnails here, you can right-click on them and say create a virtual copy right here, and that is helpful. So I usually use those so I can edit multiple copies and then view them. Another option is to use snapshots. I don't really use them very much. I like virtual copies. You can delete them. It doesn't delete the photo. It just deletes the copy, and they all root from the same raw image without actually having to have like 7 of the same raw image in your library taking up space, bogging down your computer. So it's pretty cool. Easy way to be like, oh, I like this edit. I want to make another one, see what it looks like, and you can kind of go back and forth between them. Yeah, that's all there is to it. That's how you edit images in Photoshop. I hope I helped you out a little bit there. A lot of it, maybe. If you have questions, please ask. If you have suggestions, please tell. I'm here to learn. You're here to learn. No ego. Let's just help each other out. Let's get better together. We have a great photography community. Reach out to people. Ask them stuff. Hopefully they're nice to you. If they're not, you can always come to me. I got your back. All right. Until next time, guys. Peace. I look forward to making another one of these for you so we can get better. All right. Have a good one. Peace.